Welcome to Immersive Reality. We are here to prove the case for augmented and virtual reality and immersive technologies in business, entertainment, and marketing. I'm your co-host Dave Mason, founder of Uncommon, an agency empowering retail brands and institutions with the ability to deliver immersive experiences to their audiences through augmented reality and interactive installations.
My name's Bradley Smith, co-host of Immersive Reality and founder of AVO, software to create, manage, and measure augmented reality marketing campaigns. Dave and I have a lot of war stories to share, so buckle up and get ready to immerse yourself.
Hey everybody, and welcome to the first episode of Immersive Reality. We're here to talk today about, ourselves. We're going to talk a little bit about Bradley and his company AVO, and Dave, myself, and my company Uncommon. We're going to tell you a little bit about ourselves and some of our background and why we decided to start doing this podcast. One of the things that we both found ourselves in is the creation of a new AR business focused on immersive experiences and augmented reality. I'm just going to throw this over to Bradley real quick. What has it been like starting a new AR business?
I started my business about 2 years ago, and I came out of the Air Force, moved to Charlotte, and my background was in marketing agencies and software development. So my plan was just to have a run-of-the-mill marketing agency, and I soon discovered that I didn't have any other tools in my arsenal that no one else had. And it was a challenge for me to try to find something that differentiated my marketing agency across the board and allowed me to separate myself from others. So a guy that I met came in, asked me the same question of what differentiates myself compared to other marketing agencies. And at the time, there wasn't anything. So I started searching for technologies and services that could help differentiate myself and stumbled across augmented reality and quickly started learning that this could be a tool in my arsenal that no one else had and could help me separate myself. That's how I got started. That's how I kind of got my foot in the door with augmented reality. And after that, it's been a pretty interesting ride. But from your perspective from an agency, what was it like getting started?
Tell you what, before I answer that question, I have a question for you. You mentioned that you went into this meeting, that you kind of talked to this person, and you discovered there wasn't anything that made you unique. What was the question and answer like there with the client? Like, did the client like say, "Hey, what makes you special?"
Yeah, so kind of a funny story. It was kind of more of like a round table and having a discussion with now my mentor, Michael Rell, and he was just kind of hounding me and asking me, what separates yourself from the other 50 marketing agencies, which I'm sure marketing agencies can relate to because it's so run-of-the-mill: Facebook, Google, pay-per-click, display, add in some PR, sprinkle this, sprinkle that. But there's no real new technologies or services that you can provide. And at the time, my answer was pretty simple: nothing. There really wasn't anything that differentiated myself if I was taking my biases away from it. So that was really an eye-opening experience. And one of those things that really makes you think hard about yourself because it's a big problem that at the time didn't feel like there was a solution for, but definitely happy that I was able to find a solution and kind of get the agency going.
Got it. So you decided that AR was going to be the thing that made you different, and that kind of led into starting AVO and your augmented reality business. So as far as like starting that on the agency side, where I came from, it's been a transition to focus on how do we deliver that through this tech? How do we deliver an AR experience through all the different platforms that are available to us? And one of the ways that we do that is through this really intense discovery process where we figure out what's the message? Why are we going to do it? There's so many different avenues for doing these things that we felt like people were a little overwhelmed whenever they tried to do it. But it can be super, super simple if you just distill down what the message is, and then it kind of figures itself out. We're just trying to make things as seamless as they can for an audience, so the technology just disappears. It'll feel like magic if you can't see the tech. And so instead of spending a bunch of time and money on, ad buys or trying to go way out there and do some crazy ridiculous installation, we're spending a lot of time and money on figuring out how to best connect the audience through the technology for our client. A lot of that came through like coding content instead of building like static content, and making it so users don't have to even hit a play button. They can just step into an experience, and again, it's just like magic. So our transition has really been building on the tech.
That definitely makes a lot of sense, but curious from Dave's perspective, why did Dave decide to take the jump from a traditional agency to an immersive agency?
Yeah, so that's a really interesting story. The agency that I used to work for, we were doing some standard content, and there was a relationship with this band called Saint Motel. And Saint Motel, really, really bright group of dudes. These guys were coming out with their second album, and they wanted to build the world's first virtual reality music album. And they had made a couple of like 360 videos. They kind of dipped their toes into it when we got involved. And we said, you know what, we want to build this with you guys. We want to finish building the entire album and figure out how to deliver it to fans in a way where they don't necessarily need a headset to view it and experience it. And figuring that out was such an eye-opening experience for me, because we weren't just building content. We were identifying who the customers were, who the audience was. We were identifying how they connect with the band. We were figuring out what are our barriers for entry, and then building all of the content in the entire experience in a way where it was seamless, getting it into the hands of the fans. And it was a huge success. We ended up building all these music videos for the entire album, putting it into an app. The app went out to the fans. Fans downloaded the app. It was amazing because apps are so hard to get people to download. And the response was overwhelming. So it signaled to me that this is the future of not just content, but advertising, of media, of entertainment. And that's why I jumped into it.
Wow, that's quite the story of a beginning point.
I know a lot of people have probably a not as exciting project, right? The world's first VR album is kind of like the feather in my cap, and it led to a lot of other cool things. But as far as us getting into it, the barrier was kind of identifying customers and how we can get the tech to them. What are those barriers for you guys? Like, did you just start coding right away to like build this platform, or were you guys trying to identify how are our customers going to use this?
Yeah, so that's a good question. In the beginning, I had some software experience coming out of the Air Force. So building the kind of MVP of the technology was not my barrier to entry. I was able to get Unity before you working pretty easily, get an MVP out there pretty quickly to start to see feedback. The thing that I quickly learned, which was our biggest barrier to entry, was the amount of options and the amount of blue sky dreaming customers have, which I'm sure you can relate to. But showing the technology, it was really difficult in the beginning because people would want to go this way with it and this way with it and this way with it, and they could do 1,000 different things. And it was really challenging to actually find a starting point. So the challenge for me wasn't necessarily as much on the software side. It was where you go after the software. When the software is built, especially in these emerging markets, the challenge is not finding 1,000 customers. It's finding your first 20, 30 repeatable customers. So there was a lot of market research and there was a lot of customer discovery. And we went through conferences, art galleries, museums, nonprofits, direct mail, I mean, you name it, trying to figure out where those first, 20, 30, 50 repeatable customers are. And then you add on the amount of education that you still need on top of all of that, proves that it's really not the software that's hindering AR. It's after the software and the education that's needed to find those first, again, repeatable customers in an emerging market like augmented reality. So the challenge was pretty difficult, and it's something that honestly we're still figuring out as time progresses. But that's, kind of the software as a service SaaS side, is that we're able to iterate really quickly. From an agency, when you guys have these longer sales cycles and work more closely with customers, what's the challenges that you guys are facing?
Well, I think you said it already. It was education. It's teaching people what's out there and how they can use it. One of the things we had a lot of experience in was creating content in your traditional channels. And the shift to immersive was relatively easy because those foundations of identifying, creative concept and delivering that were already there. So we just had to figure out, how do we take this layer of tech and apply it to what we were doing? And once we figured that out, it was actually, fairly easy to build. It's easy to make the content. The biggest challenge was showing people how to navigate the pain points and educate them a lot on how to actually implement that tech. Once we figured out the education part of it and teaching people what's available, then it kind of opened up their eyes a little bit. And you can tell when the wheels start to spin and things start to get a little, sometimes it gets a little crazy because people are like, ooh, we can do this and we can do that. We can do this and we can do that. And pretty soon you're snowballing. But it's good. That's why we do that discovery process, is we're able to kind of identify what makes sense. Let's educate on the things that make sense and tell them why those things work. And then everything else just kind of figures itself out. As far as the pain points, it's how to educate and how to implement.
Did you have troubles early on with not really being able to show the content or be able to kind of show the experience? When I think about these emerging technologies like AR and VR and blockchain and AI, I think from a experience point of view, you understand the benefits and the value, but sometimes it's really difficult to kind of show people what the experience or what the technology can do, because a lot of times you're needing a little bit of buy-in in order to get a pilot or to be able to get something that's demoable. So in those early days, was it really challenging, or did you get pushback on people not really being able to see the experience that maybe you're pitching to them?
Well, I'm going to answer that with two words, and the people that really know me are going to get this: sweet talk. And if you don't know what that is a story for a whole other day that involves a lot of sleepless nights and drying clothes on server racks. But I think what made it easier for us was the fact that, I put in a lot of time to build some content that we could show people. We spent a lot of energy showcasing things, and we still do that today, saying, hey, we have an idea internally, let's go build it, and then let's go show it off. And, those are things that we're investing in ourselves. So if we have an idea, we tend to take something that, we've already done in the past. We've made this before. We can showcase that we're capable. But also you can say, we can remix this a little bit. We can put a twist on this so that it works in your case. Being able to showcase that content makes a huge difference. If we don't, then sometimes we go and reference other things. We reference other ideas, and we talk about ways that we can make it immersive. So it may not be saying, here's X, it already exists, we're going to do this, we're just going to copy it, slap your logo on it, call it a day. It's pulling a bunch of different things together that may not be in the immersive space. They may be completely separate from immersive, but then we go through the process of kind of explaining how it can look, how it can function, and people tend to get it. And that's why we put a lot of time and effort into our discovery and creative processes. I want to go back to some of the pain points. A lot of that is education, right? Teaching people how to implement the tech, teaching people how it works. What are the pain points for you in terms of showcasing and kind of convincing people that this works?
The number one pain point after the last 2 years has definitely been building an app and starting with an app. When we're in the marketing space, it's incredibly difficult to try to get someone to download an app. And nowadays, apps are getting more and more saturated, and Gen Zers are getting more and more sensitive to downloading apps, and everyone's starting to get more sensitive to download an app. And honestly, no matter how good the content was, needing to download an app to activate the AR in a marketing channel just wasn't good enough. And there's way too much friction, and it was such a big pain point early on. And at the time, there wasn't really a solution. I mean, web AR was just kind of starting to come around. And then in 2019, it definitely picked up some steam. And I think it's interesting to look at now, even Zapper, one of the, leaders in this space, they are going more and more and more appless into the web AR space. And we completely redeveloped our whole platform and have gone 100% appless. And honestly, over the next probably 3 to 6 months, we won't even support the app anymore, or at least that's our goal, is to get completely away from the app, because we've been doing internal tests and been able to understand the app list. Just scanning a QR code, typing in a URL to activate the AR is obviously, 10x better. And that's what everyone strives to do, is build a 10x better product. So for us, the biggest pain point was needing to build an app early on. And luckily, we were able to kind of find a solution, an appless solution that allowed us to solve that pain point. But man, that was the number one biggest pain point. And then the second one is just what we've already hit on, education. And I think when people think of education, they think about maybe these, technology feats or how the content works or execution. And I don't think people understand that education boils down to the most simplest things. I mean, place a video on a postcard. Everyone who's in AR understand that you could have done that 10 years ago. The problem is when you show customers that, I would say 50, 60, 70% of them, all of a sudden they think that the print needs to be special, the video needs to be special, they're going to have to reprint everything, they're going to have to get a special augmented reality video in order to get it play right. And I think a lot of, tech founders or, marketers and sellers in the AR space, they kind of move across that. And I realized early on that I was moving way too far down the line and not educating them on the most simplest things of letting people know you don't have to have any special print. You don't have to have a special video. You can just get something that simple working today. And that surprised people, which in turn surprised me, because I was like, oh my gosh, this is like the most basic, simplest things. And there was still so much education at the simplest terms. So that was secondary, probably arguably actually the first most challenging part. But honestly, again, it just takes a lot of time and education. But what are you doing in your agency, and what efforts are you doing in order to educate your customers?
So I think one of the biggest things is what we're doing now, right? That's the whole purpose of this podcast. It's help people understand the benefits of immersive and how to use it, how to get into it, how to navigate it. The second part of that is discovery. And I keep saying that word is so overused sometimes, but it's a tried and true process. And it's been done a million times before us. It'll be done a million times after us. But it's just the process of taking your customer, your client, on a deep dive to understand your customer's customers and figuring out what those customers are looking for when they're trying to connect with a brand or an institution or an organization. We want to help our clients connect with their audience. That's why we're doing all of this, is taking people through that process to understand how they can use immersive. And I think the biggest benefit is not to us, it's to our clients. And when we give our clients the ability to go back to, their superiors and within their organizations and be able to say, hey, we're doing it this way, we're doing this, and here's why, you're just arming those stakeholders with the tools and the justification they need to implement what they want to do. So if a client wants to do immersive, we go through discovery, we give them all the tools, we give them all the information, we give them everything they need to go back to the people that they answer to and say, this is why we're going to bring immersive into our business. That's it for this episode. Check us out wherever you get your podcasts, and be sure to check in next week when we talk a little bit more about content. That's all for this episode. This has been Immersive Reality.